Is your mic on? Is your mic on? Oh. Now it is.
The Colfax City meeting of February 26th is now in open session. Will you lead us in the pledge, please? Can I get a roll call?
We're currently missing Councilmember Gross.
And she spoke to me before the meeting, and she will be a little bit late this evening. Okay, can I get an approval of the agenda order, please?
Second? All in favor?
All in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye. And we don't have any presentations tonight, so we'll go straight to agency reports.
Madam Mayor, Ty Connors will not be joining us tonight, so the class Kevin Sheriff won't have any presentation tonight.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Mayor, fellow council members, members of the audience. Brian Egan, Battalion Chief, CAL FIRE, Placer County Fire in the City of Colfax Fire Department. So I'll make this real brief because you're going to listen to me talk here quite a bit pretty shortly. So since we last met, our call volume has predominantly been relatively low for the not only within the city but battalion-wide. Can't tell you why, but people are maintaining control on the highways and taking care of themselves in their homes. And so the two things that we have began to get some activity in have been vegetation fires. Obviously, we're going to finish this month completely dry. I'm sure, Will, you could speak to that. And with that, we've had a number of debris burn escapes. In fact, every day somewhere in the unit we're running at least one debris burn escape. And all of those that I have been on are all because there's been no clearance to the responsible party's piles. So just because there's permits aren't required, you still got to maintain your clearance. The second thing we're starting to see a little activity on is medical rescues. And we had one yesterday evening on Stevens Trail, and there was one related to an incident that happened on the trail, but that we actually were able to get to the patient in the parking lot. So as people are getting out and the weather's nice, the activity level on the trails is increasing. We're having those activities. So with that, control burns are becoming a problem for us daily. We're having incidents within the unit. So maintain your clearance, take control of your fire. Leaf litter is bone dry, and it's what's carrying the fire. North Fork American River Shaded Fuel Break. Here about 4 weeks ago, we started pile burning on the areas that we did the initial phase 1 treatment on. That's been going real well, although the weather has impacted the ability for us to get into some of the areas that we normally would be treating. And we're having to change up our routine a little bit and work in some areas that we weren't planning to be into yet, and it's delaying us getting into some other areas. And then the last item I have is tomorrow we will be conducting a broadcast burn of 3.74 acres on the Colfax landfill off of Iowa Hill Road. This is the first step in the maintenance of the phase 1 treatment to the land that we treated 2 years ago this coming April. And the broadcast burn consists of using fire in a controlled manner to remove the ground litter and the regrowth vegetation coming out of the brush stumps and some of the scotch broom that's come back up after we've treated the area. So we'll be starting that about 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, predicting it to last about 4 to 5 hours. So there'll be a little bit more smoke in the atmosphere than what you've been seeing coming out of the piles from the fuel break. And once we get that one done, we'll have one next week on another section of the landfill, and then we'll be moving to the wastewater treatment plant. And we've identified about 25 acres on the wastewater treatment plant property above the buildings that we'll start broadcast burning on in 2 weeks. And if our weather pattern remains the way it is, and it looks like March is going to be an unseasonably dry month, we'll probably continue to broadcast burn until we start to get some significant rains. Yes? Yes, that is the Forest Service. No. Cal Fire, U.S. Forest Service. They wear green, we wear blue. They are, so that actual column of smoke you saw today is actually on the Georgetown Divide, so it's another river drainage over, and they're conducting control burns. Today's was about 90 acres. Starting tomorrow and lasting for a number of days, the Tahoe National Forest will be burning above the community of Forest Hill and the Sugar Pine in the Deadwood area, and they're test burning a number of acres and some plots that they're going to plan to do some larger scale broadcast burns here in the next month. So yep, that's what those are. So with that, if there's no questions or no other questions, you'll see me in a few minutes. Oh, yes, sir. We won't know if tomorrow's a burn day until tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock when plaster air pollution, but as far as all of our regulatory hurdles that we have to jump through, we have the green light to put fire on the ground. So as long as it's a burn day and I get region approval at the moment in time, we're putting fire on the ground. So, all right, thanks.
We had one action item from them from last time to find out about that bridge that was no, the one on the Highway 5th, yeah. Right.
Oh, the reroute?
Yeah.
Fred Abbott, City of Colfax Event Liaison. The prodigal son has finally returned. We had a crab feed, not a crab feed, I'm sorry, a Cipino feed at the American Legion Hall, and it was last Saturday, or a week ago Saturday, and it went very well. For those of you who don't like Cipino, but I think it is going to become a very popular event. We had anticipated 60 people. I'm glad we didn't sell that many tickets. We didn't have enough room for 60 people in that facility. So it'll be capped at 45, unless we wind up putting it in another facility. We've got are you going to talk about the taste of chocolate? Okay, I don't have to talk about that. Railroad Days is taking off like a shot. We have people are calling, 4 or 5 people a day calling to, a week, calling to become vendors and to participate in Railroad Days. Anybody that, Marnie, the Chinese Memorial, have them get in touch with me, because if they don't come to Jesus here, I've got trains that can go in there. So have them get with me. I'd love to have them again this year. Okay. Okay. Other than that, I think that's all I've got. All I've got. Any questions? Thank you.
Hi, Chris Nave, California Highway Patrol, Gold Run area. Sorry for being late. It's baseball season. I'm not going to ad-lib here. I'll just read this to you real quick. I wrote this up today. So over the weekend of June 27th, 28th, the 750 Special Olympics athletes from all over Northern California will come together at UC Davis to compete in the culmination of the spring sports season. After weeks of training and competing at regional events, athletes will have the opportunity to compete against athletes from all over Northern California and all sorts of, from bocce ball, swimming, tennis, track and field, you name it. It's been going on for 23 years. A law enforcement torch run has. This campaign, known as Law Enforcement Torch Run for Special Olympics, has a collaboration of Special Olympics, successfully foster development and maintain the relationship, which can only be described as unifying. So, Special Olympics is going to be in Davis this year. And with a lot of convincing and persuading, I got them to agree to start the Special Olympics Torch Run in Colfax. So, and I thought it would be a very fun idea to start it right here at City Hall. So on June 25th, I believe at 8 a.m. in the morning, the details are still being worked out, but the Northern California section of the Special Olympics Torch Run is going to begin right here in Colfax. So it would be great if we could get City Hall members, fire. I haven't talked to Brian or Ty yet, but I volunteered them. So to get them on board, and it'll start here, and they'll run through town, and then we'll go down towards Weimar, where either the Sheriff's Department or Auburn PD or Auburn CHP will carry the torch on, and it'll make its way down to Davis for the Olympics. So I just wanted to talk to you guys about that, see if we can get you guys on board. I think it'd be a great thing for Colfax, the community, to support it. By rule, law enforcement has to carry the torch, but there's no reason, in my opinion, why everybody in the community couldn't be involved in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you can walk, run, whatever you want to do. Whatever, I think it'd be a fun, unifying event for the community. So just keep that in mind. I will keep sharing the details as we get closer, as we get them ironed out. But that's it as far as that goes. And then,
So, Chris,
yes.
that means you could deputize each person to carry it 10 feet?
Right? Yeah, why not? Yeah. So yeah, I went to this whole big meeting and event about this, and I am on board 100%, and I got our area on board, and I think it'd be a lot of fun and to support the torch run for Special Olympics. So as far as the area goes, highway violence, road rage, things are up. We had a guy pull a big old dagger on somebody on the freeway just a couple days ago. We had a pursuit yesterday, or was it the day before? It's all blending together. Day before? It's all blending together now. Guy was under the influence of multiple things, tried to flee, and you ever seen the movie Christmas Vacation, where the car goes underneath the truck, the big rig? He tried to do that, but with a truck, and it didn't fit. So he got stuck there, and he got out, and he was madder than a wet hen, and things escalated, and we had to take him into custody ever so politely. So the weather, we haven't had any weather, so it's been like one of the driest Februarys that I can remember. So, but people are still, the congestion, for whatever reason, congestion causes impatience, causes people to get angry. And as you know, up here with our 2-lane roadways, when somebody crashes, it backs up traffic forever. Then now with GPS, our back roads are getting congested and become a mess. So road rage, highway violence seem to be on the upswing. It doesn't seem to be going away. So, I went on the radio on Monday just encouraging folks to just don't partake and rise above that stuff. If you got somebody tailgating you, just move over and let them go. Just let them go. Don't brake check. Don't put your windshield wiper fluid on so their car gets wet. Don't hand gesture. Just be a better person. Be a better person and just rise above it, because again, you just don't know who that person is that is around you, and you don't know what they're going to do these days. So that's it. The crashes are down because we have no weather. So other than that, that's about it going on. Anything else I can answer?
Highway 50.
Foxy.
I used to work with special students. Now, we've got ARC in the area. Don't you have any special students in the area? I know some of them are not coming around.
Yes, and we are in the, I shouldn't say, I am in the very initial beginnings of this, for lack of better terms. So as this thing culminates and we get this thing put together more, I'm going to another meeting in a couple weeks to get the logistics all worked out. And yeah, this would be a really, really fun, cool event, I think, and to get our community backing this. And it was fun. I mean, I participated in some of these Special Olympics events just a few weeks ago, and it was a blast, man. It was a blast. So, yes.
Some of the young men that volunteer in Queens City Hall and the Sheriff Dispatch Office are Special Olympic.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome.
They belong to another load team, and so I can get you connected up.
That would be fantastic, yeah. Yeah, and if you have connections, anybody's got connections that can help, let's make this thing great. And just, I think it'd be a great thing for our community. So if we backed it, it'd be a lot of fun. Anything else?
Highway 50.
Highway 50.
You were going to
I
respond.
totally failed you. I failed you. I just forgot all about it. So let me write it down again so I could check into it. Yeah, as soon as you said that, I went, uh-oh, somebody redirect. So. Highway 50 project. That's a good question.
Yeah.
So, okay, I will look into that.
Just to make the 80 traffic more congested.
Right, just bring more traffic our way. So, yeah, you know, I shouldn't interject my opinion because I'm not supposed to, but sure would have been nice if when they widened 3 Mile, if they would have just kept moving more dirt over and made 3 lanes in both directions, but what do I know? I'm just a lowly.
I live up at the top in Secret Town, and it's been wonderful ever since they finished it. And I had
Yeah.
an opportunity to say thank you to one of the contractors.
Good. Awesome. Thank you.
Good evening, Tim Ryan with the Colfax Chamber of Commerce, Mayor, council members. So just wanted to let you know a couple things that we have done. We did have a meeting with Cindy Gustafson, Supervisor for District 5, last Sunday. That was very informative. It was kind of thrown together pretty quick, but it worked out really well. We had it over at the Chamber office, and yeah, had a few people there attending, and she was able to help us out with some good information. Also, coming up this Wednesday, March 4th, we will have our coffee and conversation, and we will have a presentation by Kathy Lee, and she's going to be talking about women in business. So it should be a very good presentation for our members. And that's Wednesday, March 4th, 8 a.m. The location is the Chamber of Commerce office, which is the old depot, 99 South Railroad Street. Also, we are getting ready for our annual meeting and luncheon. That's going to be March 25th. And we are right now doing some interviews on our new candidates for our board. Candidates this year will fill up our board. We will have a total of 12 members, board members, and Connie Heelman, Randy Ely, Dave Johnson, Mary Fatula, Nick Lancaster will all be applying for the 4 positions. And we will be sending out some short bios on them, either e-blast, email, but to let our members know who is running for the board of directors this year. Also, too, one of our board members, Bob Morales, has been working with PG&E and trying to get them up here to give us a presentation on the upcoming year and what we could expect as far as any power outages, how they're handling that. I'm going to read a quick response that we got from them. Right now, PG&E is redesigning the program, and we are going to be going out to communities with open houses. The customer open house that we have coming up in Colfax is tentative for June 11th. They are saying this way they will have the entire community will be invited, and we have all of our subject matters that would be able to be answered by their staff for the program at that time. So tentatively, June 11th is what we're going to be looking at. We'll obviously be working with the city on this and get this nailed down, and possibly it would either be here or even next door in the theater. So, so that's some good news that'll be coming along and great information. Other than that, that's about all that I have. Great, thanks guys.
Good evening, Sharon Connors for Sierra Vista Community Center. We have had volunteers helping us. That's something that we don't often get, but we've been very, very pleased. We've been doing a lot of work around the property, touch-up painting, and even our esteemed president, Kim Douglas, was out there working and closing our propane tank. He did an awesome job. Little League is coming back to play. Their opening games will start soon. They are going to be at our center this weekend on Sunday. They are looking for volunteers to come and help with their cleanup. We are going to start Saturday with cleaning up as well. So anybody wants to volunteer, has a weed eater or a rake, or wants to come out and just give us a hand, that would be great. Colfax Lions Club has been very generous to the Sierra Vista Community Center. They have given us a grant to remulch our areas, so that will be another improvement that we have going on. And Sunday is bingo, and we hope to see everybody there. It's not Super Bowl anymore, so, and it is our bingo appreciation free lunch. So we are having chicken salad sandwiches, fresh salad, and ice cream for dessert. And that is for appreciating the people that do come and support our fundraiser. And another note, VFW Auxiliary, we're having our corned beef dinner on March 14th at 6:30 at the Veterans Hall. We will have raffles and casino raffles as well, and a no-host happy hour starts at 6. I have 8 tickets left to sell. If anybody's interested in purchasing them, I'm here. I have my tickets with me. Thank you.
Foxy McClary, 127 Sanders Lane. VFW breakfast, second Sunday. Legion does their dinner on the third Thursday at 5:30. I'm going to tell you guys, I waitressed the Pacino dinner. You guys missed something, and I'm going to tell the whole of Colfax, you missed the best. We had 30 people there, and 32 are already signed up for next year. That's how good it was. Support the Legion. Go next year. You will not be disappointed.
Foxy was our waitress.
Anyway, the Chocolate Wine and Art is coming up on May 2nd. And I've got 14 artists, 2 chocolatiers, a winery, and poetry. We changed the date, so we're not going against the Methodist Church on their poetry thing that was on the end of April. So now we're going to add a new poetry thing. I've already got 6 poets. They're going to be in the Bianchini room. It'll be shut, the door will be shut, and you can sit there in quiet and listen to wonderful poetry. We're bringing it back. So that's May 2nd, 6 to 9 p.m. It's a Saturday evening. Okay, don't forget it. We will also have tables with seating for people that need to sit down during the event. But we have some really good artists. And this is your chance. There may be another art show happening. I won't tell you about it because a friend of mine is organizing it in Colfax too. So artists are starting to look at this area. And the art walk will also start May 15th on Friday, and I have a really nice surprise for all the artists when they do it on railroad days when they show up. Okay, thank you.
Kim Douglas, the Sierra Vista, do you have a question? Kim Douglas, Sierra Vista Center. On Sunday from 1 to 4, the Little League will be out there trying to spruce up the field. And maybe if Chris Naves could stop by and give us a little supervision. 1 to 4, you can just show up for a few minutes. We're trying to set up bleachers and put mulch down and get the field ready for the Little League. Thank you. Sunday from 1 to 4.
Off and on. Public hearing, staff presentation, introduction of the hazardous vegetation abatement and establishment of defensible space ordinance, and public hearing. Wes?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tonight, you're going to hear a presentation from Brian Egan, the battalion chief, on what the ordinance outlines, the history of the need for the ordinance. And after conducting the public hearing and getting public comments back in, staff is going to ask that council introduce a proposed ordinance required hazardous vegetation abatement and establishment of defensible space by title only, and waive the first reading, schedule the proposed ordinance for adoption at the March 11th, 2020 regular meeting. With that, I'll turn it over to Brian if they can get it to work again.
And rotate it a little bit. Yeah, rotate it clockwise, the whole projector. There you go. That'll fix it.
So good evening again, my name's Brian Egan, I'm the Cal Fire Battalion Chief. Colfax Alta Battalion, I also represent the city of Colfax Fire Department. So 3 years ago, when I got in this position, this was something that was a topic that hadn't yet come to the attention that it's received in the last year and a half with all of our fire activity, the fuel break and everything else. It's been worked on by myself, a working group within the city council and the city staff, and tonight we're going to give that initial presentation to you. So the City of Colfax Vegetation Ordinance, creating a defensible space within the community of Colfax. So the objectives of this presentation, we're going to outline the first responder, city government, and the community's role in the defense of a community from the threat of wildland fires. We're going to talk about what is defensible space and what is hazardous vegetation. We're going to review defensible space statistics from recent fires. What does the state or Placer County have for vegetation ordinance already? We're going to talk about what the city has or what it needs. And we're going to outline the points within the city ordinance. So the defense of a community relies on a partnership. And that partnership is built just like a stool on 3 legs. It's first responders. It's CAL FIRE, Placer County Fire, City of Colfax Fire Department, it's the Placer County Sheriff's Department, California Highway Patrol, and Placer County OES. It's city government, city council, city planning and building departments, and our fire planners. And it's the community. It's you. You're a part of this. It's our homeowners, our business owners, and our landowners. So in this partnership, we each have roles. First responder roles. Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, pull it off there and just hold it. If you.
Let me see if I can turn and, there we go. Are they able to hear me now? They'll let you know? All right, perfect. So first responder role, training and planning before the incident, a coordinated response during the incident, development of pre-incident plans, construction of fuel breaks like the North Fork American River shaded fuel break that I spoke about earlier, performing defensible space inspections, providing subject matter expertise to the city government officials, and providing public fire safety education and support. Our city government's role, development of planning and building laws in support of community defense, coordinating their goals and objectives with first responders in the defense of the community and development of the community, establishment of sensible and obtainable objectives for the community in the form of hazardous vegetation and defensible space ordinances, and educate and support the community in its effort to attain the defensible community. And the community's role, this is your piece of this partnership. You need to be prepared. You need to get engaged. Don't be a victim, be a survivor. Sign up for Placer Alert, the county's emergency notification tool for the community, and that's the web page to sign up for it at. Learn about preparing for evacuations through the Ready, Set, Go page on the CAL FIRE public website, and you can visit that Ready for Wildfire website there at the readyforwildfire.org address. And providing your home its defensible space, and you can gain more information from that at that same website, the readyforwildlandfire.org. So what is defensible space? So a simple definition of defensible space is an area surrounding a structure that when properly created and maintained, it provides that structure enough distance from the burning vegetation or other material that under average weather conditions would be unlikely to ignite the structure. There's always that one-off. There's always that freak wind event. There's always that one circumstance that we can't plan for. But a true defensible space is that clearance that you provide your home and your structures that under our average day-to-day weather conditions that we experience in the Sierra foothills, your home is defendable. Firefighters will not engage a structure that has ignited and does not have defensible space. The resource is better used on structures that have defensible space, and more importantly, for the concern of the firefighter's safety. And so there'll be questions after. Yep. So the reality of it is, and I'm going to show you some statistics here shortly, but the reality of it is firefighters are in short supply when fire is running through neighborhoods. And our efforts are best focused on homes that have defensible space where the landowners have done their part of that partnership, where we know we have the best chance to defend that structure. So what is hazardous vegetation? So hazardous vegetation is vegetation that is flammable and endangers the public safety by creating a fire hazard, including but not limited to seasonal and recurrent weeds, stubble, brush, down limbs, low-hanging branches, dry leaves, pine needles, and tumbleweeds. Nowhere in there are we talking about ornamental vegetation. Your plants that you go to the nursery and buy and that you take care of are not included in this vegetation ordinance. And the key to hazardous vegetation is that it must be dealt with annually. So it's not a one and done. How many times you rake the leaves up to have the wind come up the next day and you got more leaves or more pine needles, all right? It's got to be done annually, and sometimes it's got to be done multiple times during the course of the year. So some defensible space statistics. So these are from 2018, which was a tragic record-setting fire season in California, and these statistics come from that year. So in 2018, there were 7,571 wildland fires on federal, state, and local lands in the state of California. Of those 7,571 vegetation fires, there was over 1.8 million acres burned statewide. There were 150 fire fatalities, 6 of those being first responders, and 144 civilians. And just recently, if you've watched Fox 40 News, that number was increased by 50 victims related to the Camp Fire. So before that, it was 100 fatalities statewide in 2018. So in that year, we lost 22,703 structures, and there were another 1,496 structures damaged, for a total of 24,199 structures destroyed or damaged. Again, a record-setting year by leaps and bounds. So from those statistics, a lot of scientists and a lot of field folks were able to gain some really key statistics that are starting to steer what we in the wildland fire arena didn't really realize that we were seeing when we were out there. So first off, 93% of all structures that catch fire during a wildland fire will be destroyed due to a lack of defensible space. Almost 100% of the structures that don't have a defensible space, if they catch fire, they will burn totally and be destroyed. 85% of structures that catch fire during a wildland fire and survive do so because of firefighters' defensive action in support of that home's defensible space. That goes back to that earlier slide that I talked about, what is defensible space. Firefighters that can engage a structure, even when it's ignited, have an 85% success rate in saving or at least limiting the damage to that structure if the landowner has done the proper defensible space for that structure. These two next statistics were actually quite, I won't say shocking, but they were very enlightening to us when they came out. So 50 to 66% of structure ignitions come from ember cast. So before 2018, our thought and what information we had was the main fire front of a wildland fire is what ignites and destroys the structures ahead of it. Out of 2018, what we actually found was that up to 66% of the structures that we're losing or that we're seeing ignitions in are actually coming from the ember cast that's ahead of that main fire front. So when we start talking about the defensible space, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the presentation, one of the things that we're looking at is those receptive locations around and on your home where embers can find their way in and ignite. And what's happening is it's not happening while the firefighters are there. It's happening hours or even in some cases days after the fact when the firefighters move on chasing the fire front that we're losing structures because they're igniting back behind us. And 33 to 50% of the structure ignitions come from the radiant heat. That's purely vegetation that's too close to the structure, and when the vegetation is on fire, that radiant heat that you feel from your own fireplace at home or a campfire or a candle, that radiant heat is what's actually igniting the structure. So talk about some existing defensible space laws. So to understand how the laws work in California, the first thing we have to understand is that there's different kind of land in California. Land that's outside of established cities, that's considered unincorporated land, falls under state responsibility area, SRA. So it's not federal land, and it's not land in the cities. It's land in between those two areas. Land that's inside of established cities, incorporated land, falls under local responsibility area. The city of Colfax is an incorporated city. The land inside of it is what is considered LRA. So when our homeowners that are in the state responsibility area, those homeowners are required to provide defensible space to their structures through the enforcement of Public Resource Code PRC 4291. And this law applies to developed properties only. So right now the big argument in the state is, well, my neighbor won't do anything about the vacant lot next to me. The problem is Public Resource Code doesn't address that. And to go back in the history books to understand how this law came about, if you go back 100 years ago, when the Public Resource Code was written by the Board of Forestry, it was never intended to be used for defensible space to the structure. What it was intended to be used for was when your cabin caught fire, there would be enough clearance around your cabin that it wouldn't get into the wildland, which is what the state was worried about, the watershed that's within the state responsibility land. In the 70s, after the horrific fires we had in Southern California, we began to use that law in the opposite way in defense of the structure. But the problem is vacant properties, vacant lots, open space was not included in that. So it only applies to developed properties in the state responsibility area. So in Placer County, like many counties in the unincorporated land, the SRA, the county has strengthened the Public Resource Code by adopting an additional ordinance for vacant parcels. So right now in the county of Placer, they have an addendum to our 4291 law that says that a landowner of a vacant parcel next door to you that is closer than 100 feet to your structure is required by their ordinance to provide you whatever space you need to give the 100-foot clearance to your structure. That's all great, fine, and dandy, except the one loophole that the county didn't think of, and that was when that neighboring piece of property has an improvement on it, their ordinance no longer applies. So if you and I are neighbors, and I'll use this example later when we talk about the city's ordinance, but when you and I are neighbors and your house is 80 feet to the property line, and my property, which is 5 acres next door to you, when it's vacant, the county's ordinance requires me to provide you that extra 20 feet of clearance to your structure. The moment I put a home on my 5 acres, no matter where it sits, the ordinance no longer applies. So it's a problem in the county's land. So in the LRA, Public Resource Code does not apply. The cities are responsible for their own defensible space laws, and many cities throughout the state have adopted similar ordinances or adopted the 4291 law to use as their enforcement tool and their education tool for the public. So what does the city of Colfax have or need? So currently the city of Colfax does not have any law providing direction or supporting the partners in the defense of the community with hazardous vegetation by providing that defensible space. So there's nothing for the first responders, there's nothing for the city officials, and there's nothing for you as residents within the city currently on the books that provides any direction, any law, or any enforcement abilities to provide defensible space to your homes. So what does the city need? Well, the city needs a hazardous vegetation ordinance to provide that needed direction and support to the partners in the community. So let's talk about the ordinance in itself, and I'm not going to go specifically into very in-depth detail, but I'm going to cover 5 components of that ordinance and give you a brief outline in each area. So the first section we're going to talk about is the expectation of the owner or responsible party of an improved parcel. So an improved parcel in the city of Colfax is anything that has a dwelling, a building, a structure on it, all right? The expectation for the owner or responsible party of a neighbor to an improved parcel. So your neighbor has a responsible piece of this for you. The expectation for the owner or responsible party of an unimproved vacant parcel, and there's 2 different sizes that we'll talk about. The expectation of owner or responsible party of roadside easements, and we'll review the enforcement for the ordinance. So in an improved parcel, the owner or responsible party of an improved parcel in the city of Colfax, so you have a house, you have a business, you have a building on a parcel in the city of Colfax. These are the things that you would be responsible for. So you're responsible to provide clearance around your structures on that property from hazardous vegetation to a distance of 100 feet or to the property line, whichever's closest. And the first 30 feet is the most critical. Second item, provide 10 feet of clearance from dead or dying vegetation to the structure, the roof, or the chimney. Keep the roof and gutters clean of leaves, needles, or other hazardous vegetation. And maintain a 5-foot clearance around the structure free of leaves, needles, or other hazardous vegetation. So you and I are homeowners in the city. These are the things in a general description that we're responsible for annually. For neighboring improved or unimproved vacant parcels. So the owner or responsible party of any parcel that neighbors an improved parcel shall, in the event that that neighboring structure is closer than 100 feet to its neighboring parcel's property line. So I'll use that example again. You and I are neighbors. You've done your defensible space, but your house sits closer than 100 feet to your property line. And the neighboring parcel, my parcel, has hazardous vegetation closer than 100 feet to your structure. Then it is my responsibility to provide the neighboring improved parcel, you, the remaining fuel reduction of hazardous vegetation needed to provide the structure on that neighboring parcel the required 100-foot clearance. Okay? And again, we'll catch questions at the end. So unimproved or vacant parcels. The owner or responsible party of any unimproved vacant parcel not adjacent to improved parcels. So that last section included improved or unimproved neighboring parcels. This section speaks specifically to vacant land in the city that doesn't border an improved parcel that requires additional clearance. And we've broken it into 2 categories based on size. So parcels that are half acre or smaller, the responsible party or owner shall cut and remove all weeds and grasses to a height of 6 inches or less, prune and remove ladder fuels to a height of 10 feet, and remove all hazardous vegetation off the parcel. Parcels that are larger than a half an acre in size, and a football field is 1 acre, just the football field, not excluding the end zones. So to give you a size reference, a football field is 1 acre. So in section 1, half of a football field or smaller. In section 2, parcels that are larger than half of a football field or larger shall provide around the perimeter to a distance of 25 feet within that property, cut and remove all weeds and grasses to a height of 6 inches or less, prune and remove ladder fuels to a height of 10 feet, and remove all hazardous vegetation within that 25-foot wide line around that piece of property.
You're going to define ladder fuels?
I can. So a ladder fuel, so there's ground fuels, ladder fuels, and aerial fuels. Grasses, ground litter are ground fuels. They originate and stay on the ground. Aerial fuels are tree canopies, tall brush, things that have an overhead coverage. In between are ladder fuels, things that allow the fire to get out of the light and flashy fuels on the ground and spread into the canopy of the trees or the taller brush that are overhead of them. Does that make sense to everybody? Thank you. So roadside easements. The owner or responsible party of any roadside serving as an ingress or egress shall create and maintain a 10-foot wide fuel modification area adjacent to the shoulder of the roadway, and they shall, all trees and hazardous vegetation and ladder fuels shall be pruned and removed to a height of 15 feet above the road surface. So enforcement procedures. So education is the key to this. And I don't mean to stand up here with a big hammer and slam it down and say, thou shall do these things. The reality of this, the statistics show, as I've shown earlier, homes without defensible space are almost 100% loss when they ignite. And it doesn't require a massive fire coming out of one of the canyons that borders the city to burn those homes. We have more structures on an average basis are lost on day-to-day, what we consider routine fires, than the few large fires during the course of the year. Yes, we've had a couple of historic fires that have wiped out entire towns, but the reality of it is, daily throughout the state, we're burning homes down, we're losing homes and commercial buildings because of simple little fires that started within the community and burned a few acres. This is not in the event that a fire comes out of the canyon next to us. This is for the everyday defensible space for the community. So education is the key. And through our own statistics, in the 4291 inspections that we do in the state responsibility land annually, 80% of all first-time visits are compliant. People are already doing the things that we would like them to do as part of their annual activities around their home. And of those 80%, a few of them are compliant when we come back on our first re-inspect. So right out of the gate, 80% are perfect. There's not a problem with them. Of the 20% that's remaining, 10% are compliant on the second inspection, and 10% require going all the way through the entire, for us, the enforcement of the law through the county DA. So education, again, being the key. Educational workshops, scheduled site visits, and neighborhood visits are all a part of what we're planning to do to help the community prepare for this and understand the importance of the ordinance and the intent of the ordinance. Within the city, the enforcement will be complaint-based, so we're not going to be out driving around doing inspections on your homes or your businesses. It's going to be complaint-based. The enforcement of this ordinance will follow the current and existing code enforcement practices within the city. I'm not versed on that. I'll let the city attorney and city manager speak specifically to those points if there's questions for that. And with this ordinance, from the date that the council signs it, there'll be a grace period to get everybody up to speed until January 1 of 2021. So we don't want to, again, come in with a heavy hammer and say, thou shalt get this done right now because we signed it last night. This is going to take some time. It's going to take some work, and we understand that, all right? This is again, a little is better than nothing, and right now we have nothing, all right? So with that, I'll open the floor for questions. Your hand was up first, young lady.
What about low-income homeowners, not renters, homeowners, that really can't afford to get that work done? Is the city going to offer, or are there any programs that will be offered to them?
Repeat your whole question, just so people at home could hear it.
I forgot the question. No, I did not. In the case of there's a homeowner that would be considered low income, and they don't have the funds or the help to take care of that. Is there programs that the city is going to offer or direct from the state that can help them in those areas to get their property with the ordinance?
So specific to this ordinance, there's no section in this ordinance specific to that. The city has had communications about nonprofit groups, volunteer programs that may be available for those types of services.
So the city is going to work on that to try to help the
I'll let the
citizens
city
of the
speak
community.
specifically to that, but we have had some initial conversations in that, yes.
Now, when you're saying hazardous material, or I'm thinking what you're talking about is green,
Is what?
Is shrubs, bushes, trees that, that people haven't cleared. What about there's a house up the hill with all the junk surrounding it? Would you consider that hazardous?
I do,
I do too.
and the city has an ordinance specific to that.
Okay, so the
Already on
city,
the books.
that's going to be in there also.
Yeah,
Great.
it's not part of this ordinance. The city already has an ordinance specific to
They
those.
have an ordinance and they don't enforce it?
Well, again, it's complaint-based.
Wow.
So,
I'm
and
sure
I'm not
there's
going to
been
speak to
lots of
that ordinance, but
complaints.
what we modeled, when we started this initial process a year ago, we looked at that ordinance and to see if we could modify it, but there was too many modifications to make that ordinance fit what we needed to address and what our ultimate goals with the hazardous vegetation was going to be.
So is
But
it-
there is a ordinance on the books specific to that.
So as citizens of the community, we should go directly to the city and
You go.
bring our
come-
question two
come-
or three times to
No,
them?
no, come to City Hall, right outside the door.
No, I
There-
know where it is.
there's
I've
a-
been there.
There's a complaint form. Take the complaint form, fill out what the issue is, and turn it in. That's what it takes to start that.
And so the city does respond?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We'll watch that. Thank you.
You bet.
There's one more answer to Sharon's question too, though. We've built a hardship application
Oh, that's right.
into the ordinance. So if somebody has a financial hardship, they can come to City Hall, apply for a deferral of the work, and that will be issued in the city manager's discretion. So
That would be really awesome,
Yeah,
because
it-
there are low-income homeowners, not renters,
Yeah, well, and not,
homeowners.
Sharon, not only homeowners, but some people are low-income renters.
Well, but
And the
that-
homeowner doesn't do anything, so.
I'm sorry, but
we're
that
trying
goes
to
back to
cover
the
things.
homeowner. It has nothing to do with the renter. You're going after the homeowner, never the renter. So you would not even approach the renter on that, doing fines or anything. That always falls on the taxpayer.
Yeah, and the total community involvement, they are going to be coming out and helping people, maybe seniors. So we have that in the works as well, to cover those areas.
That's good to hear. Can you guys show up at Sierra Vista Community Center this weekend? Thank you.
I'm trying to understand the defensible space. I have almost 2 acres in the middle of town. I have 5 or 6 neighbors who have built their houses close to my property line. They've even put their fences on my property line, telling me the city allowed them to do it. They didn't. 25 feet from that fence into my property line, I have to take care of, right? Myself,
No.
because they got close to my property
No.
line with their house.
It could, if they're on the property, let's take the worst case, their house is on the property line, then their 100-foot circle goes 100 foot onto your property.
So they can't yell at me. I have neighbors yelling at me because I have property in a gully that I've pretty much left natural, but have been pulling Scotch broom and stuff around it for years. And as you say, it comes up. So, because their house is maybe 80 feet or only 10 or 15 feet from my line, they're responsible over the fence?
You
I'm
are.
responsible. So I'm responsible for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 houses.
You're responsible to provide the defensible space,
From the fences
whatever
they
the,
put
whatever
up
the remaining amount
into my property.
to equal 100 feet from their structures, yes. The way the ordinance is written, yes.
not the fence, I think she said the fence, not from.
Not the fence, the structure, the home. So whatever the distance from the home, 100 feet out, whatever that is on your property, that would be what you would be responsible to provide them.
How long are you going to get me to cut all those limbs and things by myself?
No, no, but wait. But you have to define, Foxy,
I'm so nervous about it.
Foxy, you have to address what is hazardous vegetation.
Yeah, you would be
So-
putting
so-
that out
no,
on
wait, so-
record so
so-
that we can see, or
so-
when I look that up on the computer, I can see that.
Yeah, so part of the education process with this ordinance is obviously going to be site visits, neighborhood visits, community involvement. There'll also be a number of handouts and other brochures here at City Hall that we use on the state responsibility land side that provide the homeowners on state responsibility land the same information that we want to be able to provide to you. So it'll give you good definitions. It'll give you good examples, and then always you can have myself or one of my staff from the CAL FIRE station come over and give you some advice and walk around the property with you,
Okay, good.
just like we do on the outside of the city. What are you shaking your head no about?
Yeah,
Well, no, I've been clearing a lot of stuff, because I used to be the dumping ground for a lot of people.
So Brian, one of the questions that a lot of people have asked is if I have trees on my property that are within my neighbor's 100-foot circle, do I have to cut the trees down?
No.
Okay.
You don't have to cut your trees
Right?
down.
Do I have to trim all the limbs off the tree up to 10 foot off the ground or 15 foot off the ground?
You do if they are within that 10-foot distance of your structure or the neighbor's structure, but there is not a specific height distance in the ordinance specific to, unless we're talking about roadway easements.
Yeah, not roadways.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that people get worried about, they're what I call green vegetation. That's not where this ordinance, things that are growing, living, alive, that's not the issue. The issue is stuff that is either too close to a building where they can't maintain the building, or it's stuff that's left go where like it's 6-foot tall field weeds that are within your neighbor's 100-foot circle. I'm sorry, when they dry in the fall, they are flammable like mad, and the goal is to get that stuff out of here so that your neighbor's house is not at risk. By the way, he mentioned a thing called radiant heat earlier. So I was at a house in upstate New York, and I was about a football field from my neighbor's barn. His barn caught fire. The vinyl siding on my house, about 300 feet away, melted. I got all ripples in it. Didn't melt off the wall, but it was basically damaged from the radiant heat. The radiant heat was hot enough that just that soaking heat over about 30 minutes just destroyed the siding. So it's really important to keep this stuff clear around the structure so that the structure doesn't get on fire. Because imagine if your neighbor's house was 20 feet from yours and it catches on fire. You really don't want your neighbor's house catching on fire, right? Because that radiant heat is pretty high. So anything you can do that helps get this dry material out, which is a lot of the stuff that's out there, or the stuff that is too close to a structure, away from the structure, makes their jobs orders of magnitude easier. And again, nothing will be perfect. So all this is about like trying to get to that goal. Talking to insurance people, if we can really pull this off in Colfax, this leverages Colfax financially from an insurance standpoint. It says, can we use this as a negotiating point to get our rates down, right?
Thanks, Joe.
Are you also going to address, some of us have heat our houses with wood fires only. Where do we put our wood fire piles?
You talking about your firewood piles?
Yes.
So preferably your firewood pile would be at least 5 feet away from your structure.
Oh, okay, 5 feet away,
Yeah, at least.
at least.
So remember I talked about Embercast? Embercast loves firewood stacks. And lawn
Oh,
furniture.
God, that's not
And
easy.
bark, and the shredded cedar bark that you put in we all put in our flower beds. All of that stuff is what's burning homes down behind the firefighters after they've left the neighborhood. Because it smolders for hours. And then it catches on fire.
So when you're like chipping, when you've taken down trees and whatever, the chipping piles, what do we do with them? I mean,
Are you talking about on your property or what we do with it out on the fuel break?
no, I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Just broadcasting those chips isn't gonna cause a problem. Just talk about the dry, wet part.
Yeah.
Just say it's time to open the public hearing and hear from them.
Yeah.
Well, the one gentleman left.
Yeah, so it's time to open the public hearing. Any members of the public that would like to provide comments, please step up to the podium and remember to speak clearly into the microphone and limit yourself to 3 minutes.
Connie Hylam, I'm a business owner in Colfax Creative Corner and Connie's Decors, and I have a concern about the sign that Bob Townsend gave us on the west side of the freeway by the county yard. That was designed, the intent was to have that sign be a promotion for downtown Colfax. That was the intent of it many years ago when Bob Townsend gave it to the city. And
Yeah, yeah.
And
So-
gave
so-
it to the city.
So Connie, it's not public comment, it's
Oh.
public, yeah, it's
Oh,
public comment on the hearing that we're having
Oh,
in
excuse me.
reference
I'm
to
so
the
sorry.
defendable
I'm so sorry. I'll
space.
come back.
It's okay, please do.
Yes.
So any public comment on the hearing item requiring the vegetation, the hazardous vegetation abatement? None? Okay. Closing public hearing. Can I hear from council? Can I hear from council? Joe?
Yeah, if I listen to what people have been asking me, it says, what do we do about insurance and insurance rates and insurability of homes in Colfax? This would be a huge step for us to move in that direction, right? And from my view, it's like one of these essential things that we've got to think about how's the right way to do this. So I'm in favor of this.
Councilmember Douglas?
I met with Chris Paulus last week concerning fire insurance, and one of the ideas we came up with was to treat insurance much as we do earthquake insurance, where it's optional, where you can opt out, and that means your home would not be protected from, a fire like the one they had at Paradise, which would be very unusual, but your rates would go way down. So he's going to present that idea to an insurance company and see if there's a chance it gains traction. That's the only comment I had.
Just wanted to kind of reiterate on what Chief Egan said. The intent of this ordinance is not to cause hardship to anybody. It's to protect the community as a whole. There are a lot of different resources out there that we can bring to homeowners as we're going around doing inspections or getting complaints or hearing from property owners that they can't afford it or can't do the work or have issues. Lots of programs we're working on. We'll work on grant funding, and we'll do everything we can to ensure that everybody's successful in getting this done. We're not going out to punish people. We're going out to help make the community safer. And we don't want to cost people undue harm or anything like that from this ordinance. So we'll work on it. It'll be some growing pains. It'll be a little bit for people to get used to, but all in all, I think this will be a really good thing for everybody in town.
And the only thing that I have to comment on is this is basically, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, this is like an addition to what we're doing out in the fire breaks, but within our city limits, right? Through the partnership.
So this ordinance would provide it would provide direction and leadership for the community members for providing defensible space within the city. The area outside the city, CAL FIRE has the legal jurisdiction to do the inspections for the defensible space for the homeowners there. And then this is then a connection to the fuel break. So we have 5,100 acres when it's complete of the fuel break, the North American River Shaded Fuel Break. 5,100 acres will be treated between Interstate 80 and the North Fork River drainage. Between the freeway and the fuel break, for its 17-mile length, there's 20,000 improved parcels. So we have 5,100 acres that we're treating, and those 20,000 parcels that are improved between the fuel break and the freeway, if each one of those does their defensible space, that's an additional 20,000 acres of treated space. And then add in the acreage within the city of Colfax, we got a pretty good anchor to hold fire out of this community.
Okay. Oh, I have one more question. Sorry.
That's all right.
So adding on to the fire break, you had mentioned something about maintenance. So we have we have funding for the actual project, and that's what everybody's out there doing since January 1st.
Correct.
But now the maintenance piece, so you say you've cleared all that acreage, what happens with the maintenance piece if there's no funding, and is there funding?
So to go back a little more than a year ago today was when our new governor came in office, gave CAL FIRE the direction, a 45-day report, and he wanted identified 35 priority projects in the state that the state was going to make priority funds available for. Our North Fork American River Shaded Fuel Break was one of those 35 projects. So in the initial treatment phase of the 850 acres that we started on last year, we got full funding for. The program and the prescription that was written for that fuel break incorporates a 10-year maintenance of that fuel break. So each year, our unit forester will be receiving grant funding for both our own resources and private resources to continue the work or maintain the work that's already been done. The broadcast burn that I will be the IC of for tomorrow is the first step of this year's maintenance within the fuel break.
Okay, so there is funding piece there.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are we doing a vote?
So, yeah, Madam Mayor, what staff is asking of the council is a motion to introduce the proposed ordinance by title only, waive the first reading, and schedule adoption of the ordinance for the March 11th meeting.
Do I have a motion?
Motion for what Nick said.
Do I have a second?
Second, but I have one question. Is it, at any time are we going to actually read the ordinance?
We don't plan to, that's why we asked that
Yeah, I understand this time, but I'm thinking like we should do something from an education standpoint at the next council meeting as well.
that's up to the council.
Yeah.
We can certainly read it or have it available for the public to read anytime they want. It's available now.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking like I'd like to have, somehow we do roll out the education plan for this.
Yeah, Joe, so I mean, I think reading the ordinance verbatim, we'd lose the audience in it. I think the presentation that we did is a good tool. We could pare it down even more to just talk specifically about what it means and do another read of that. Historically, normally what happens is when it goes to the second read, it goes on consent.
Yep.
We can make sure it goes on council business and do that piece of it.
Yeah.
Do a brief presentation and then obviously have council adopt.
And I would suggest that for the presentation, we focus on what the business and homeowners piece of it is. I think that's the key piece. And I think those brochures that you have that we've seen before, that would be a perfect thing to walk through as well. Just to continue this education piece. And we almost ought to plan on doing something like that for each of the council meetings throughout the year, just to keep this focus in front of everybody.
Great.
Right?
So after adoption, the plan was to make the circuit around to the nonprofits and others and do a brief presentation of the ordinance going forward, but right in line with exactly what you're saying.
And one of the other things I would like to look at is, I've been trying to arrange this so it's not something I commit to today, but with the improvements that I made to my house to try to do these fire safe things, and with the insurance rate that I got, which blew me out of the water, is how low it was, I would like to kind of get one of the insurance guys to come in here, maybe do a short seminar on doing these things. You can see what the benefit is to a home, right?
So is that a second?
Yeah, was that second? Yeah, back to the motion, it's second on the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. Consent calendar, item 6. Consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one blanket motion with the council vote. Unless a council member and/or member of the public requests an item to be pulled from the calendar for discussion, items pulled will be addressed after council completes the consent calendar vote and will require a separate motion. Are there any items that council or the public want to pull from the consent calendar? Seeing that there's no items, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we have public comment.
Sorry, Connie. Thank you for waiting.
So any items that are not on the agenda, you have 3 minutes to discuss.
I have concerns about the smaller billboard that's on the west side of the freeway. That was, the intent of it originally was to have it market the Old Town Colfax. And that was given to the city by Bob Townsend in lieu of him getting the approval for having the other 3 or 4 signs that he has on the other side of the freeway. And I think one also by his other property by Dingus McGee's. Anyway, and I was saddened to see that it wasn't kept that way and that it's being rented out to other parties, which I can understand some of your reasoning for doing it, but I really hated to see advertisements for Nevada, the casinos in Nevada on it. I think that I really was very disappointed to see that. I was wondering if you guys could do something different than that and make sure it's just our local people that are getting on that billboard, or go back to having it promoting the Old Town Colfax. And maybe it can be even, and I also would like to see, I was working with Placer County Tourism Bureau several years ago, and I'm going to get more excited about working with the Chamber of Commerce again, hopefully if I get elected on the board. But I'd like to see you guys put on the TOT tax addition, at least having it at up to 3 or 2% more, now that we're getting the new motel and then we're having the RV park.
Yeah, we have that coming up, right?
And I'd like to see.
It's actually identified in council goals. It's in there. It's the objective is to get that accomplished and on the ballot by the 2022 election.
I was just hoping it could be done sooner than that, so you guys are losing a lot of money. But it's your choice. But also, I think the chamber and a lot of the locals could help you with educating the public. I know the public does need to be educated, but at least we've got a small community, a little easier to go door to door and let the people know that it's not a tax on them, it's a tax on the travelers. And usually the travelers, even Best Western will advertise their hotel rates, but it just always says plus taxes, and the travelers are used to paying it. And I just thought the sooner you could get it going, I think it would be good. And I think we could have a lot of volunteers who could help you educate the public so that it could, I know it has to make a 65% vote to make it work, and it didn't work in Auburn, but they've got a they've got a huge community to make it work at. But I think we've got something that would be easily, we could convince our people that we could use more funds in the city and possibly to help promote more tourism in our area. Thank you.
Thanks, Connie. Any other public comment?
Good evening, Council. I'm Will Stockman, 525 Pine Street. Last Friday afternoon, we had one of these multi-unit work trains roll into Colfax. And they sidetracked it over in the UP yard, where it sat and ran all Friday night, all day Saturday, all night Saturday night, all day Sunday, until it finally pulled out around 8:30 in the evening. I have a couple of questions. Was the city notified that this thing was going to be parked in the city, running with all the lights on all night long, all day long?
Union Pacific does not communicate any of their commerce business or maintenance equipments with the city itself at this point.
I guess I knew that. Here's my other question. It just now occurred to me, listening to Brian here and people talking about complaints. If I'd come in Monday morning and filled out a complaint, a noise violation over the weekend, would the city try and enforce that? Because I looked up your noise complaint. That stupid train sitting over, and it's all these multiple they're all running. They violated your industrial noise complaint. I mean, they're against the ordinance all the way. If I made a complaint out, would you guys?
Close them down.
Would you enforce it?
Definitely follow up on it. I think a better avenue is to go through air quality. Because I know if they have equipment running out there and they're not supposed to have it idling and everything, and I believe they have a response, almost that will come out immediately, deal with that issue for you as well too. So it's another avenue.
Yeah, but getting a hold of Placer County air pollution on the weekend is just not going to happen. So what can we do about this? Because this happens almost every year. The same train gets sidetracked over there and it runs all weekend. What do we do?
We can talk about it offline, Will. We can probably get in contact with Francisco Castillo and try to figure out what we can do to eliminate that issue or reduce the amount of time instead.
Call Mr. Castillo. That's a waste of time. Thank you.
Called Dick Cheney.
Union Pacific doesn't really care what Colfax has to say. Unfortunately, Union Pacific does not really care what Colfax has to say. I figured you did.
But they do care what gets on TV. So we've had a number of television stations that have come here to look at different things. We could invite one of them back, come here at just the right time. And that may help provide enough emphasis to solve the problem. Just another thing to think about. But I think filling out the complaint is still the required thing that we should do. And we should get that as a problem that the city owns to go fix. Right? How we fix it is a different question. There may be several avenues, but I think we need to at least start with that.
Any further public comment? Seeing none, let's go to council and staff. Joe, if you could please start, and we'll work our way through to the city manager.
Okay, one of the things that I've been actively trying to do is work on what we can do from an insurance standpoint. That's kind of my focus this past month. And I think I've got a number of ideas that I think will dramatically help. And I'm trying to use my own house as an example for doing this, just to say how much would the rates change depending on what things you do to your property to say, is this an investment that's worth making or not making? So that's been probably about 30% of my time for city-related business has been focused on that. That's all I have right now. Kim?
I have nothing. No, I'm just kidding. I've been to a bunch of meetings in Sacramento Area Council of Governments, and we discuss many subjects. Some of them don't pertain directly to Colfax, but I'll just take 30 seconds and mention one of them. The transit. Sacramento has a population of 3.3 million, or rather San Diego does. Sacramento 2.4 million. And that generates a sales tax revenue of $300 million for San Diego and only $130 million for Sacramento. So we spent an hour and a half talking about increasing transit in Sacramento to try to catch up to and imitate what San Diego does. So I won't mention any more except just that SACOG talks about a lot of different subjects. Another thing, we had a representative from the Assembly came over, and for anybody that's interested in buying an electric vehicle, they have a breakdown of all the different vehicles, comparing the mileage and how fast it takes to charge it, and et cetera, et cetera. So if anybody wants one, here it is. Then we had somebody fly in talking about rails to trails, about bicycle trails and so on. So I went out and got a coffee and a donut because I thought it was going to be boring, but it actually was a very interesting talk because they showed that initially people are not too excited about putting in trails, bicycle trails and running trails. But 90% of all the people that did it, in the survey they did, were pleasantly surprised in the amount of revenue it brought in and the number of tourists that it brought in. And the young people that it brought in, people lingering. So I think we have a 10-foot easement, don't we, going from the roundabout area to this part of town? Don't we have a 10-foot easement?
I'm not sure about the width, but we have the Bunch Creek Trail easement that comes from the Sierra Market section over through
Okay.
Central Street, yes.
But anyhow, that's one potential, and we might be able to get some money from SACOG to help develop that. Okay. Another meeting was on the regional housing needs allocation. That's where we have to zone a certain percentage for low income and a certain percentage for middle income. And the majority of the jurisdictions down at SACOG claim they're not able to fulfill all those requirements. We're in good shape here in Colfax, but just to let you know, we're ahead of the curve compared to the other cities, especially in Lincoln. The mayor was complaining that they just can't meet the requirements that the state is going to put on us. So that's good news for us. In Pioneer Energy, which has 90% of the market and about 96,000 customers, time of use, TOU, is coming in the near future, meaning that between 4 o'clock and 9 o'clock, you will be punished for cooking your meal or taking a shower or doing your laundry. Just so you know, it's in the near future, time of use. Let's see what else.
How would they know?
When they go, ouch, when they read their utility bill. No, there'll be advance notices.
No, how would they know that you're taking a shower? Right?
Well, when the meter spins between 4 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Anyhow, it's just, we can't do anything about it. It just kind of letting you know that they're going to turn the temperature up on us. Let's see, what else? I think that's it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Trinity asked me to do an announcement for her if she would make it in time. Is it okay if I do that now?
Sure.
So Trinity wanted to announce the Green Machine is having a crab feed coming up March 14th. Happy hours at 5, dinner's at 6, and the serving goes until 11 p.m. We have a silent auction and dessert auction, and we'll have all-you-can-eat shrimp, crab salad, bread, and pasta. Also a DJ with a no-host bar. We have just under 20 tickets left, and they are $50 a piece. Tickets you can call Trinity at 530-906-8530, or you can email info@colfaxgreenmachine.org.
John.
Thanks, I was gonna mention that. You can also get tickets from me too, if you want. Sorry. All right, should be a good event. I didn't really have much. Tomorrow night is the Placer Sierra Fire Safe Council meeting. It'll be here at City Hall Chambers at 6 p.m. Please come by. We'll be talking about the ordinance a little bit more and some grant funding and what the Placer Sierra Fire Safe Council might want to be doing with that. So if anybody has ideas or would like to come hear what we have to say, we'll be here 6 p.m. tomorrow night. That's all I had.
Okay, so the Colfax Elementary students, 7th and 8th graders, had their Hard Work Cafe awards. That's always nice to go to. We held a workshop at the seniors area for phone scams and how the Treasury office will never call you asking you for your information. So we just went through that stuff. I also went to the League of Cities new mayor training, which was quite productive. And I did a couple of my ethics trainings, AB 1234 and AB 1661. I also joined the Rural Caucus. And then I was invited to the chamber for the breakfast, and I did a state of the city there. So that was fun. What else do I got? March the 3rd is Super Tuesday, so remember to vote. Measure B is Colfax Elementary School Bond, so take a look at that. And remember that your county supervisor, Cindy Gufferson, is on the ballot, so please be sure to read up on her. And that's all I got.
Madam Mayor, there's a couple items I want to update the council and the public on. The state Cal OES issued out an RFP for funding for communities to harden their systems in response to the PSPS events. They issued out a program that had $10 million worth of funding available in it, and the cities could apply to up to $500,000 each for it. But keep in mind, there's $10 million, there's about 400-something cities throughout the state, so that money wouldn't go very far. Cal OES actually received over 300 applicants and about $130 million in funding requests, which obviously far exceeded funding available. So if each applicant would receive, a proportional amount, they would have only issued out $33,000 to each jurisdiction that applied, the only 300. The city of Colfax was awarded $300,000 of that. So obviously we got a huge portion and chunk of that. So that's a huge win for the city. That money is going to be used to replace some of our backup generators on our sewer lift stations so we can get them up to date. Those units are 10 or plus years old and are needed to do. So I attribute a lot of that to some of the actions council take and, calling for the state of emergency and those types of things. I think we've got the attention of both Cal OES and PG&E. So I think hats off to council and obviously staff are pulling together application to get the funding. Another good positive thing is that one of the council goals they had was to look at, see if we qualify for the CDBG program, which is a community development block grant. So we did the initial look at that, and we originally thought we were going to have to do an income survey to qualify, which was going to cost us about $25,000. It turns out that we already do qualify, and we can apply for funding that's called over-the-counter funding. It's non-competitive. So we can receive up to $3.5 million for facility improvements, road improvements, and those various things.
Per year.
Per year. So there's a catch to it that it's all based on the census data. So the new 2020 census that's coming out, those findings will be coming out early next year in January of 2021. So that may, again, we may not qualify for it at that time, but I believe we still will. I know if we had the new homes all filled up with the new owners, we probably likely not. So I'm anticipating that we're going to get the $3.5 million annually likely for the next 5 years. That's about $17.5 million worth of revenue that we're going to have. That staff would recommend that we apply to repairing the roads over that term. Catch is it's only for the construction. It's not the planning side, so the city's going to have to invest or find other funding to do the planning side of that. That's another, I think, huge win for this community at this point for the additional revenue. Lastly, the acceleration lane on I-80. That project is going to start April 7th. It's got a 45-day completion goal. And that project is another project that Caltrans is putting back into this community that's over $1 million. So you're going to get the acceleration lane going westbound out of the roundabout. It's going to get the full extension to the 500 feet in there, so it's safer and more convenient for people to get on there. With that, Madam Mayor, that's all I have.
Okay. And now we have council business? Yeah. Oh, council business, and we have Lori presenting. Our finance director.
Good evening, Council Mayor. Tonight, we're looking at our mid-year budget review for the fiscal year 1920.
1920.
2019 to 2020 fiscal year. Sorry. Fiscal year 20. We initially approved this year's budget back in June of 2018 when we went through our biennial budget process. We reviewed it again last June and did some amendments, and tonight we're going to talk about where it looks like we're going to finish the year at. In your budget packet, I'll direct you first to page 52, which is the fund summary. We reviewed 6 months' worth of actual revenues and expenditures by fund and department level down to that detail. This schedule points out to you the projected actuals based on that review. And the first column there is for the revenues compared to the adopted budget. The next column is the actuals projected, excuse me, for the expenses. Third column for the fund transfers between funds. And the very last column over there predicts the net change in fund balance and how we think it'll look different from what we went into the year with the budget. If you drop all the way down to the bottom, that positive number you see down there of $611,000, we look to finish the year increasing our fund balance by that much, more than we expected going into the year. So this is a good look at the year. I'm going to point you back now to the schedule on page 49, which is in the staff report itself. This is a summary of that schedule detail. One thing that I think is important to point out is that of the $611,000 that we expect to come out ahead of the budget, over 55% of that is in restricted funding. The first fund category there is the general fund unrestricted, and on the next page, on page 50, there's a summary of the different items in the general fund that we think will be a little bit different than the budget. In total, we think we'll come out ahead $186,000 in the general fund unrestricted. 66% of that, or the $123,000 in that first column, is based on we think revenues are coming in higher than expected. Most of that is in sales tax, licenses and permits, and our building permits. Those numbers are really up. And our interest income is up about $20,000 from what we had budgeted. On the expense side in the general fund, we're coming in under expenses by the $62,000. The biggest piece of that is we got additional funding for our sheriff costs. Every year we get $100,000. It's called a COPS grant. It doesn't stand for COPS, but it's called a COPS. I can't remember what it stands for. And then they evaluate every year how that got allocated out to all the cities and the jurisdictions in the state. And if there's excess funding, you get it. We've gotten it the last 3 years. We got $55,000 this year. It's not something we can plan on in our budget, but we have gotten it the last 3 years. Let's see. Another big thing in that category is our planning expenses are down from what we had projected. That doesn't mean that planning's that less busy, but some of the expenses putting forth to like the update of the general plan are now being covered by a grant that we received. So that's kind of a quick summary of the general fund unrestricted. Under special revenues restricted, the difference that we see there of the 115 or round up to 116,000 is all in mitigation fees. And this is for fees that we received for development that we did not have specifically identified in the budget, so that it just came in earlier than we'd planned. We had kind of thought it would be coming in next year. That money is restricted to be used on capital items within our city ordinance and the mitigation fee study. So that's restricted funding. In our enterprise fund, which is basically our sewer fund, there's two categories. The unrestricted, we think we're going to come ahead about $83,000. That's about 4% of our operating budget for our sewer operations. The biggest piece of that is in utility and staffing costs. It's not that we've decreased staffing, it's just some of the additional staffing that came on this year came a little slower and moved up into the categories a little bit slower than we had anticipated. Then the big piece there at the bottom is sewer funds restricted, the $226,000. Again, this is fees that we receive for new development that we hadn't specifically identified in the budget. It's sewer connections, and those funds are restricted to capital use within the sewer fund. So those funds can increase our capital fund reserve and potentially decrease the requirement for bringing in additional funds through our rates and future rate studies. So overall, the operations look really positive. The other chart that I wanted to point out is attachment 2, and that is our capital expenditures. We went into the year.
What page is that on?
I'm sorry, it's on page 53. We went into the year, the fourth column, you can see there was the total adopted capital budget of about $10.8 million. We expect to end the year spending, I can't read it without my glasses because it's so small. 4.6 or 4.65.
You wrote it. You wrote it.
I know I wrote it with my readers on. That looks like a big difference in capital, and it is, but the biggest thing in there is the $6 million that we're still expecting to get from the water board, that we're still in the application process for the funding, and so it'll probably just roll forward to next year. So that's pretty much a summary. We're heading into our next biennial budget process, so we'll be using this information, looking at our current activities to build that budget, coming back with a public workshop in May with recommendations that staff will come up with on that. And we'll also do all of our annual requirements of reviewing our accounting procedure, the investment policy. We'll establish our GAN appropriation limit for the fiscal year and do our fraud and risk discussions. So that's where we're at in the budget.
Yeah.
Any questions?
So
Any
the story
questions?
here is that we're in the black, things are looking good, and we're moving forward into the next budget cycle. We have a positive fund balance that we're contributing to funds that are in reserves that we can use for future projects.
I had a very easy, simple question on page 52, on Fund 100, General Fund 110, City Council. What else does that include? City Council 110, Fund 110.
I can tell you that the difference that came over spending was the equipment that we bought here for broadcasting the city council meetings. But we had also put in funding in there where we used with the consultant we used on our CDBG funding. That's what I'm thinking of off the top of my head. So it's, it's the stipends related to the city council training.
Because at first I thought it was our salary, 34,000. It is
I don't
an
think
affable.
so.
Yeah, it is an affable.
Right.
Thank you.
Anything else?
A motion to accept the budget?
Motion to accept? We need to accept?
We're the lowest paid of any city council.
Thanks again, Lori and
Right.
Shanna, very much for
It is a motion.
keeping everything in line. We definitely appreciate it. Know how hard you guys work to keep this going. So, thank you.
Did you make the motion?
Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Man. Okay, item 9B.
So, Madam Mayor, I'm glad to introduce this item. There was, at the, my glasses. At the January 8th City Council meeting, council directed staff to bring forward the concept of having a council member go to the cap-to-cap forum. The literature on the back of this is included that we have. There's additional literature included in this. I believe Mayor Mendoza's requesting to go. I think Marnie has a few things she wants to add to the topic.
Yeah, so I asked for this item to be put on, it was January? That was that long ago?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm asking the council to approve my continued efforts in the annual Cap to Cap Washington DC trip. I have been advocating for public safety funding in DC to ensure Colfax has proper funding and to continue our efforts with the American River breaks. We need funding to maintain the work, and we have started. There is, well, you answered my question, so there is funding for the maintenance, but I went back to that coffee with Montgomery. Anyway, when I went last year, I'm part of the public safety team in Sacramento, and we all go out to Washington, D.C., and we go and see Doug LaMaffa, Kamala Harris, and then different committees, and we go and ask for money for this region. let's see here. What we accomplished last year is the governor gave, I can't remember the amount, it was like 305 million towards the wildland safety. So when we went to Washington, we went and we met with these leaders there and asked for matching funds, and we got that matching funding, which is helping with some of the public safety stuff that we have going on across the state. This year, we're going to continue that effort, and what are we doing? We're going to be advocating for mental health funding for first responders, and we are actually chasing $375 million towards firefighting grant money. The full money that we're going after from FEMA is $460 million.
So from a Colfax standpoint, this has a return on investment of between 100 to 1 and 1,000 to 1. So this is a no-brainer.
Well, I mean, I have to ask,
Yeah.
in this meeting, so that's what I'm here to do, and I'm asking for your guys' support to send me so I can go keep advocating for our funding.
Yep. Motion to approve.
Oh, motion.
Discussion?
Do I have a motion?
Yeah, motion to
I'd
approve.
like to have discussion before you vote.
No, it's have to have a motion.
Oh, go ahead.
Second?
Oh, I need public comment, please.
Yeah.
Any public comment on this item?
So exactly what do you do there? Do you, give me what happens during that day?
So basically, we go and we meet with the legislators. So like Kamala Harris will have our team go in there and we talk about the different issues that I have lined out here. Kamala Harris or a staff member. So
It basically gets.
basically,
item-
I'm going to be seeing LaMaffa. I already have it scheduled. If this is approved, I will call LaMaffa's office and get a date and go and just really talk about our local issues and what's important to us around the public safety. There also are other talks that happen around air quality, and we also do environmental stuff around Bear River. So that's another, I'm not on that committee, I'm on public safety, that's my assigned duty. But there's like, basically the region goes over there and just gets funding for all the different,
After you go there, do you give a report back to the city?
yes, yes. That all came out last year.
Going to be coming in and who you talk to,
Yeah,
directing
yeah,
manager to work with?
yeah.
Yeah, and one of the
So-
main things that happens
I don't
in this,
remember
when
which
she
meeting
went
it
last
was.
year, she gets it into the staff level actions, so that it's not kind of just, you brought it up with LaMaffa and then it's gone. It's at the staff level, so it gets on their agenda, it gets calendarized and stuff, so it gets the focus at the working level to say, hey, we can't forget this. And that's where some of these funds are starting to appear back to us, coming back. So it's really important to not miss these opportunities, because if we miss the opportunity, we don't see the return on the back end coming back.
Yeah, and so let me just explain another important reason that we go over there around the mental health. So first responders, as you know, Paradise happened, and we see some of the worst, our first responders see some of the worst of the worst. And so along with the wildfire safety funding that we went after last year, we also went after funding for first responders to give them the proper debriefings, to give them proper counseling, funding, more funding for them to be able to holistically, try and deal with the things that we have to see, or they have to see. Yeah, so anyway.
Gonna go and lobby for us. It's gonna be a direct lobbying instead of hiring somebody. It's
Okay.
sending somebody who has that local knowledge and local connection to get our message out. It's amazing how just one person can go out to these higher up elected officials and just getting that one voice in gets that in their head, and they'll start thinking about that sometimes. But
So anyway,
Get it unless you try.
do you have questions?
Yeah, comment. Well, you know, I go to Sacramento a couple times a month and I grovel at a state level, so there's nothing wrong with groveling at a federal level.
Okay, so I have a first and a second.
Question. Call the question.
Oh. Yeah, can I, all in favor? There we go. Sorry, I lost it.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And then lastly, we have item 10, good of the order.
I have nothing.
Very briefly on economic development, I think every month, each of us individually or as a group should be having that in our minds. How do we economically help our community? You know, years ago, there used to be a lot of indoor activities, and I'll discuss more of this next month. But just very briefly, we used to have indoor volleyball and just a lot of different ways where people would come out and engage in community activities. So again, I'll clarify that and elaborate on that next month. But I just want to encourage all of us to not let a month go by where we're not thinking of something, even though it may be a wacky idea like let's get a merry-go-round or just want to keep it in foremost of our
Slide
minds.
over by the skate park.
Thank you.
I don't have anything for the good of the order. That means we're at 11, meeting adjourned.
Perfect. 2 hours.
Now,
Just
I
right.
got